Well, good morning, afternoon, global population, Sam Fisher here. Right, today's topic is a good one because it's highly likely I'll probably get my 5th strike. Consecutive strike. We'll see if they'll fucking ban me this time. Eh? See how long it takes them to ban me after I say you. Got you there. Right, you know what I did. Right, this whole malarkey in the Ukraine has a lot of people worried. Mostly down to the media that's come out, mainstream media about it. 85 to 90% of which is absolute doctored, it's all bollocks. Most of it debunked within only a matter of hours. And that's not just from the mainstream media, believe it or not, but that's from both sides of the aisle. And not just by amateurs, but also by government agencies, believe it or not. Only the other day there was a thing going around on Telegram about the US biolabs in Ukraine, how a bunch of PDFs have been deleted from the site. Yeah, strangely enough, those the tags, you know, the links, link tags for the PDFs, telling you exactly what the PDFs were, like what lab they were for and what they did. All that information is still up there on the webpage, including the webpage. But they deleted the PDF. It's a bit iffy in and of itself, isn't it? You know what I mean? Why just delete the PDFs and not the whole fucking page? Especially when that gives you 90% of the information anyway. Then when you actually go to Wayback Machine and you see the PDFs in question, you begin to say, well, what's the point? Why did you delete these? They're basically just receipts, pretty much, of the American company that built the facilities handing over custody to the Ukrainian Ministry of Health. Why is that such a bad thing? Huh? It does make you wonder. And then pièce de resistance with all this to top it all off. There's an EIDSS document detailing what they were, what they are. I mean, it's a company, it's an actual company. They call themselves the Electronic Infectious Disease Surveillance System. It has its own logo. Right. Well, the one on the document that was in those PDFs was fake. Wasn't the real logo. So why place a fake document in there as well, especially when the information in it's true? Dodgy. So yeah, that's one piece of very hastily put together disinformation by the US government there. But I bet you're probably thinking, well, what purpose does that serve? We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go over some of the other examples, especially coming from the Ukraine side. Mobile crematoriums that were supposedly photographed and filmed on the road in Ukraine. Except that that footage was from 2013 during a demonstration by a company that was doing mobile rubbish incinerators. The actual body bag, supposed body bag that's on the conveyor belt going into the truck is a bag of rubbish. The Ghost of Kiev. The footage that showed of him shooting down a plane was from Dota 2, a computer game. Zelensky visiting his troops on the front line. No, sorry, that was from 2014. Then there's the still photo of two Ukrainian men holding AK-47s ready to fight, supposedly from a Fox News report. But funnily enough, it was the wrong logo for Fox News, or the CNN. It was one of them anyway, and that'd be fine, you know what I mean. Could still be a real photo, except they weren't real guns, they were cardboard cutouts. You could tell. Sorry, get it? They're flat as a pancake. Right? Then there was someone sharing footage around on BitChute. Should learn really, shouldn't we? We're showing some footage around on BitChute of Ukrainian people rising up and attacking the Ukrainian police in Kiev. Basically rising up for their freedom. Yeah, that'd be fine. So it's just from 8 years ago, 2014, during the coup. You get so much garbage, you're fed so much garbage, it is unbelievable. There was a French reporter, and she walked up to another reporter that was on the ground, or who she thought who was a reporter. I think it was just a normal everyday YouTuber, a Ukrainian YouTuber. And she began to say how she was been interviewing countless Ukrainians, yeah, and even witnessed herself the Ukrainian government bombing, well, not just bombing their own people, but shelling their own people, yeah. The soldiers that supposedly gave their lives heroically by telling a Russian warboat off its coast, off the coast of the island that they were on, to go fuck themselves. Yeah, they may have done that. Well, they didn't die, how everyone said. They're perfectly alive. Or that's about all the footage that they don't show you, the Russian soldiers handing out food, yeah, to Ukrainian people. The supposed attack on a nuclear power plant that was actually the fire that was started, well, that was reported in the building, wasn't in the building, it was in an outside building, it was a training facility, and no one knows how that fire started. See how things look a little bit skewy.
Why do you think Putin is doing this? What is his end game?
Well, Vladimir Putin is carrying through on something that he's been warning us about, at least for the last 15 years, which is that he will not tolerate U.S. forces or their missiles on his borders, much as we would not tolerate Russian troops and missiles in Cuba. And we ignored him, and he finally acted. He was not going to allow Ukraine under any circumstances to join NATO. And what's happened now is that the battle in eastern Ukraine is really almost over. All the Ukrainian troops there have been largely surrounded and cut off. You have a concentration down in the southeast of 30 to 40,000 of them. And if they don't surrender within the next 24 hours, I suspect that the Russians will ultimately annihilate them. That's why Zelensky is meeting with Putin's representatives right now. The game is over. And he's going to have to negotiate the best deal he can get. And we've already told him, the President of the United States has, that if he opts for neutrality for Ukraine, we'll back him. And I think that Vladimir Putin will do that for Western Ukraine. That is the Ukraine beyond the Dnieper River. But behind it in the east, where he is now, I'm not sure what he has planned there, whether he forms another republic, annexes it into Russia, because historically it has been Russian. But the territory west of Ukraine is not. He knows that, and he's happy to live with that as a neutral state.
Right. What you've just seen there is a clip from Fox News on Friday night. Trey Gowdy interviewing Lieutenant General and former Chief of Staff, yeah? General MacDonald. I've forgotten his first name, you'll have to forgive me. Telling him exactly what got us into this mess. So, with that tiny little bit of explanation, because obviously copyright, I can't really play the whole thing, allow me to explain. What General MacDonald was stating was that Putin invading Ukraine is essentially NATO's fault, and the US's, and the UK's, and Canada's. Well, NATO. This is because I have a lot of complicated reasons, but what it essentially boils down to is that after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1992 and Ukraine got its sovereignty back, it was stated and turned into a deal with NATO that NATO would not advance any further eastward. Yeah, now that the USSR was done, basically, and all those countries would remain neutral. To say that NATO went back on that deal is a bit like saying that Katie Price doesn't like getting married a lot, because that's exactly what they did. They just moved eastward and continued to move eastward, and each time they took over or they took into a partnership, they call it, a former Soviet state. They would install a missile battery that's perfectly capable of firing missiles with nuclear warheads. They say they're not going to, but you know that given a chance they probably would. And this NATO partnership was inside a package that came with joining the EU. Now this was going fine and dandy for NATO, and Putin bit his tongue and didn't argue, didn't complain. He just let things ride like he does. He's a bit of a bugger for it. Until he got to Ukraine. Now, well, 2012, 2013, Russia built the first pipeline through Ukraine that started feeding the EU with natural gas. And the European Union's been pretty reliant on natural gas for powering most of their countries ever since. Now this pipeline, like I said, goes through Ukraine, and this is why it was to remain neutral. But some bright spark, very likely someone in Obama's cabinet who was feeling a bit sort of cocky, a bit stupid, decided to give George Soros a load of money to go and start off a coup, because the Ukrainian president at the time was very pro-Russian, and they couldn't have that. So they started to set off little sort of uprisings here and there within the Ukraine, protests, whatnot, and then employed a neo-Nazi group called Azov Brigade, who are overtly neo-Nazi, by the way, to, shall I say, make the protest a little more interesting. And like I said, eventually, after plenty of deaths, the most notorious being the Maidan protest, where I think 69 people died inside the town hall building when the Azov Brigade set it on fire and then blamed it on the then Ukrainian government. Yeah, all that's come out now, by the way. But this sort of set off a coup d'etat, and then they got a pro-EU sort of president installed. And this pro-EU president, as a thank you to the Azov Brigade, made them an established part of the military and turned them into not just a brigade but a battalion. He turned the Azov Brigade commander into his defence secretary, and when his term was up as defence secretary, he then made him mayor of Kiev and police commissioner for the whole country, by the way. Now, as soon as he did this for the Azov Brigade commander, he decided to take all his aggression out on the Donbass region and the Crimea, which are two very heavily populated by Russian areas in Ukraine. Quite a lot of Ukraine speaks Russian, class themselves as Russian. The actual pro-EU population of the Ukraine is very small, contrary to popular belief. And this was a way of getting back at those people for the transgression of being Russian. It's carried on for 8 years. Well, no, I'm skipping ahead a bit. When he started bombing Crimea, started shelling Crimea, Putin snapped and had enough. Especially when the Crimean people said we want to be separate, we need to be recognised as a separate country. And Putin said, good, I'll be a peacekeeper, boom. Winning, annex the place. It's a little known fact that the Crimea was actually the home of the Russian capital before it became the USSR, by the way. They actually classed Crimea as Russian, which is why there wasn't really much of a song and dance about him actually taking over that area. It was just when the Donbass area started to kick off and started to say they wanted independence that things got a bit antsy, especially seeing as the pipeline went through their area. So For 8 years, the Azov Brigade bombed and shelled the whole area, killing thousands of civilians, men, women, children. One of the most notorious events is the Volkanov bus incident, where they shelled 2 school buses, killing about 30 children. There's actually a memorial in, I think is it Donetsk? The capital of, I think it's Donetsk, where there's a memorial to that they erected before I got bombed as well. Yeah, nice people, these. Anyway, the Azov Brigade, knowing that they couldn't really get into the presidency, but they needed to take over, decided to employ the services of an actor and comedian who just so happened to have been playing the president, who was quite popular in Ukraine for playing the Ukrainian president in a sitcom on telly. And naturally, because of his charm and charisma, he won. To say he's not in charge, well, it's obvious he's not in charge. The guy looks scared 90% of the time, drunk the rest, and doesn't really know what he's doing or saying. He's just reading from a script. It's actually the Azov Brigade, I think very lightly runs the roost over there. They're the ones that persuaded him to, even after many sort of warnings from Putin saying, don't you dare bid for EU membership again, he went and did it anyway a couple of days ago. Luckily, he got refused, but he's looking a bit dicey for a little while. Anyway, I cut to 2021. Donbass says, right, we're sick of being bombed, we're sick of being killed, we want to be part of Russia. Are you gonna, come and do what you did for Crimea, be nice. So, Putin being Putin, and wanted to get back at the EU, I think, and NATO said, yeah, sure. Also had another reason, and that was the fact that he didn't want another NATO nation on his border, right on his doorstep, basically, this one. And it's a large nation as well, and form a nuclear one that could very easily become very nuclear again. In fact, Russian nuclear missiles were in fact in Ukraine until about 2014, when the Russian government said, okay, we'll buy them back. Even though the Ukrainians couldn't really sell them to anyone else anyway, and that's because the Russians still had the arming codes and the launch codes for them. But anyway, beside the point. So yeah, Putin stated quite loudly and quite clearly, we're going to be peacekeepers, that's all we're going to do, and then rolled in. And he rolled in. There was no fighting, nothing involved. The Donbass region welcomed him with open arms. But I think someone started getting into Putin's ear and said, right, you need to stop these neo-Nazis and stop them good. Or this is the perceived sort of narrative going for, I think. The reason why I showed you all the fakeness at the beginning that's been done by both sides, and not just the Russian sides and the Western sides, mainstream medias, but also YouTubers and bloggers on all sides of the bar that are all chucking in fake footage for no reason. Well, you think there'd be no reason, but it's long been suspected that the people that are doing this are kind of sort of on the payroll anyway, you know what I mean? You see, you'll notice something, or you'll have noticed something in the news cycle that has vanished completely since all this started. It was here today, gone tomorrow. The only mention you get of it is every now and again when the nation turns around and says, we're dropping the mandates, everything, it's all good. Now, many people have speculated why this might be, why they're all dropping the mandates all of a sudden. But I'll get to why in a minute. what you're looking at, all this in Ukraine, isn't World War III. It's never going to be World War III. Because that's not its purpose. It's a distraction. You'll notice Britain was the first to say that we're dropping all the mandates, we're dropping all the vax passports, etc, etc, etc. But no one really asked what they're going to do with the technology that they've just created for millions and millions of dollars, or pounds if you live over here in England. Stupid cat. Jumping up on the door, scared the life out of me. Anyway, no one's asked about this. No one asked about why Rishi Sunak, who's our Chancellor of the Exchequer, or if you like, Finance Minister of the world, he's the one who sets all the budget, right, for the country. He's a financial expert. I mean, the guy's a billionaire anyway, so you'd hope he was an expert. He came out 3 weeks before we dropped all the mandates, very quietly announced that at some point towards the end of this year, maybe early next year, maybe before, Britain will be changing to a digital currency. They will be introducing a central bank digital currency. Well, so what, might you say? Well, most of you are awake, I hope. I haven't forgotten about the WEF and their Great Reset idea. Part of that was to introduce digital IDs and digital currencies. Again, you're probably sat there going, so, and we can't be that bad, can it? We could use credit cards and everything else. Yeah, they don't work in the same way. See, these replace cash, and when you lose cash, you lose control of your own money, your own finances. And then you get a situation like you did in Canada with the truckers. And all of a sudden, if you step out of line or don't get the vaccine that they want you to get, the shot that you get, or you say something bad about the government, or you talk about Fred down the road the wrong way, the bank can freeze your bank account. The government can freeze your bank account. How are you going to buy anything then? Everything runs on a digital system. All of a sudden, you have a Chinese style social credit system, which is what they've been pushing for. It sounds terrifying, yeah? See, once we realised that they've run out of ideas with the COVID narrative, and it wasn't taken because no one was believing it, to be honest, and they were getting a lot of backlash, they decided to change tack and bring in Plan B. Now, one of the primary aims of COVID was to crash the economies. And they very nearly did, but they didn't quite get there. So, instead, they got all the lackeys together, because Klaus Schwab even says himself that most governments have WEF members, shall we say, twat-asses, gits in their governments. Some of them are actual leaders, like Putin and Boris and Trudeau and what's her face, Shergar in New Zealand, and so on and so on. They've been steering us in this way to get this brought in, because then you have complete control over every aspect of your life, and they want this level of control. Why, might you say? Have a guess. There's certain elements in society that they want rid of, namely the ones that speak up, dissent, won't do as they're told. You cut off someone's finances like that, and you make it socially unacceptable for people to talk to them or be near them or stand near them, and eventually they'll just wither and die. That's what they think. And that's what they're hoping for. So, yeah, they need a plan B. So, yes, Putin, who, like I said, is a lifetime member of the Young Global Leaders Initiative. They're also part of the Fourth Industrial Revolution Initiative as well, which is developing the AI tools to actually run the digital currencies. See? They asked him, Zelensky, who's another WEF puppet, to stage war. They knew that Putin doing this, people would ask for sanctions or some sort of retaliation against him. Now, sanctions are meant to do two things. They're meant to weaken a country economically so they can't actually fight, and they're meant to generate a sort of dislike of their own governments in the population. But they kind of never work that way, unfortunately. They usually end up working the other way around, where they make people hate the people doing the sanctions. But one of the main sanctions that they did was they cut Russia off of SWIFT. Now, SWIFT is the banking system the global banking system that the central banks of the Western world set up, so that everyone could do wire transfers and do business very easily. And then it became the only way that countries could do business very easily, supposedly the only way. This was meant to cut off Putin's money supply, and then he would be knackered, and eventually he would have to concede, and then they'll switch it back on. But they conveniently forgot that Russia, along with China and India and South Africa and Brazil, set up another banking system that's very successful called BRICS, and was out competing SWIFT. More and more countries were joining it. So cutting off Putin's money from SWIFT didn't really do anything. What it did do was it ended up stopping Western nations from doing business with Russia, primarily through their energy. This is a problem. Because, like I said, Europe needs Russia's gas in order to power the country. Higher fuel prices means higher inflation. Higher inflation means a devalue of your currency. And it keeps devaluing until eventually it gets to free fall, and then it doesn't stop. Like they're experiencing in the US now with the dollar. Except the Biden administration won't tell you this. Because along with Europe, the US is also tied to Russia for its energy, thanks to Joe Biden cutting off the oil pipeline that Trump set up with Trudeau, and the energy independence that Trump set up during his presidency that then Biden stopped by shutting down all the oil wells and all the coal mines. What a guy. Yeah, all for green energy, of course, green causes, even though they probably cause more climate damage and damage to the environment than anything else. Yeah, smart guy, this guy. I mean, they're equating this at the moment, right, with Putin to the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? And I suppose it kind of is, because it's just the other way around. Instead of Russia being on America's border in Cuba, America's on Russia's border in Ukraine. The only difference being, on one side you have a guy who's well versed in Eastern philosophy and military tactics, and a judo master, 7th Dan judo master, and teaches. And then you have another guy who can't find his own ass, doesn't know where he is, and doesn't know who you are, even though you probably met him about 50 times in his wife. You see there's a bit of a problem here. This is what they're trying to paint. Threat of war, threat of looming nuclear war. People asking for no-fly zones. No-fly zones are an act of aggression. They're an act of war, right? Especially in a situation like this. People who are doing that, fucking idiots. But even so, it's not going to escalate that far. You see, the whole point of this is to kick the can down the road long enough so then the economies collapse and the currencies collapse, and then the only option is for the WEF to come in and save everyone's ass with these digital currencies that everyone's using. We've already had Canada's CEO of the banking association trying to sell it to the Canadian public. Look at all these digital IDs and digital currencies. Aren't you magic? Wow, yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff with them. Your tea and all sorts. Yeah, yeah. Change your wife into a supermodel. That kind of thing that he was selling. You have the Russian finance minister only a few days ago saying we are going to be changing to a central bank digital currency in the next 3 to 4 months. They're doing it that fast. China already has it. We've been done up like a kipper, we really have. Whilst everyone's been distracted on the usual blooming free speech sites like Telegram and everything else, that people just arguing about whether viruses exist or whether their pants fit right. We've been getting fucked over by the WEF and everyone else. Myself and many others tried to tell people that these kinds of arguments were pointless, and this is what we needed to look into. And they said, no, they can't do that without vax passes, it'll never work. And I said, they will come up with another way. And they have. In roughly 8 months, most countries are going to be on a digital currency whether they like it or not. Unless we tell them no. I don't mean in a violent way, I mean we tell them no. Which means protest. Now, one critical error that people have been doing in these protests is affiliating themselves with their nation, flying their flag. Now I know what you're going to say, well, you crazy lefty fucking idiot. No, listen to me. Those flags were set up by the same people that are putting these digital currencies in. So you are therefore affiliating yourself with that element. Right? There's a guy on BitChute, I've forgotten his name, who came up with an absolutely fantastic idea, and I was kicking myself that I didn't think of it myself, and so many others. In future, no matter what country you're in, when you're protesting, don't fly your national flag. Put that away. Grab a white sheet, put it on a stick. But that's an act of surrender. No, it's not, right? That's what it got co-opted into being, right? The white flag, traditionally, was never a flag of surrender. It was a flag of peace. And an indication you wanted to negotiate a peace treaty. Parley. That's what it symbolises. It's also a war crime for even the police to attack anybody carrying a white flag. So it sort of covers your ass. They can't really beat you up then. They'll also get done for war crimes. And no one wants that. Being put up in The Hague. Lovely. Now imagine, right? If just like we had global protests for the vaccine mandates and everything else and the vaccines, that we had a global protest for this, but instead of everyone flying their own banner, every single person in every single nation protesting there flew a white flag. Transcends boundaries, transcends nations, yeah? Transcends political, theological boundaries as well as national boundaries. It becomes an extremely valuable symbol of unity across the world. Shows that we're all fighting as one for the same goal, to get rid of those fucking assholes. This is what we need. We need it fast. It's too late to weed out all the MPs or all the politicians in your parliaments around the world, all the good ones. Too late for that. It's going too fast now. Gave it a chance. We tried our best, weeded out who we could, but it wasn't enough. So now it's all your turns. Protesting's all we've got left. The minute we start acting violent, they'll bring in the army, or they'll use that as a perfect way to bring in all of this ID and currency, which is what they were trying to do before with the COVID. You ever wonder why the police were so aggressive, agitating so much? They wanted you to attack them. So then they had carte blanche to bring in martial law, and then we were all screwed. Thankfully, someone leaked that element of their plan in 2020. Despite what many people say, trying to debunk it, it actually gave away their entire plan. I've got a sneaking suspicion which Canadian MP it was as well. Thank you very much. So yeah, we are now at Plan C. I always said, when COVID's gone, we've won a battle, we haven't won the war. Time to change tack. Like, share, subscribe, you know the drill.